to see. That time just might have gotten it done.
A lot of it. And driven it the opposite way. Fortunately, Valencia hit that ball where he did. Almost any other part of the park. And it's gone.
Borbón has made a scintillating catch coming in tonight, and now one leaping going back.
That's a brace right there.
Hey everyone, welcome to our interview of Julio Borbón. He is a former professional baseball player and coach in the Yankees organization. He was a Tennessee Vol from 2005 to 2007 when they went to the College World Series. He was an freshman All-American, Team USA gold medalist, played for the Texas Rangers, the Cubs, the Orioles. Everyone give a warm welcome to Julio Borbón. Cigar.
Hey guys.
Hey, good to have you here, Julio. Excellent
Thanks
to have
for
you.
having me.
You're welcome. So I'll let you say a little bit about yourself, and we'll start with some questions right here.
Yeah, just like you said, my career obviously have taken a little bit of an unconventional route from the day that I decided to go to college, especially coming from Dominican Republic. I decided to go to UT after finishing high school in Dominican, where I proceeded to obviously go 3 years until I got drafted. And then after that, I went on to play professional baseball for 12 years and just recently retired last year, beginning of last year. And I've been coaching. I'm going into my second year in the Yankees organization, transitioning from playing into coaching now.
Awesome. So if you could expand on that a little bit, how did you end up at UT from the Dominican Republic?
That's funny you asked that because I get that question asked a lot. A lot of people always wonder, especially coming from Dominican Republic outside of the country is something that's pretty uncommon, especially with the recruiting and all that. But short story, Raul Delmonico, who was the head coach at the time at Tennessee, he decided to take it a step further, knowing that, a lot of Dominican players were good at baseball, and he wanted to go see if he could find some, what they called back then, diamonds in the rough, and was able to, track me down during one of the workouts that he had set up to actually see a few guys who were college ready. They were going into their senior year in high school. And I happened to be a younger kid who was always working out with older guys. My coach always had me there, getting me involved in trying to develop me a little quicker. So I was just a freshman in high school. And I remember him seeing me running around, and he asked about me. What about that guy? So he ended up, bringing me over. He's like, can I talk to him? So he's like, yeah. And he saw my English my English wasn't very good, but enough for him to communicate. So he was able to, just find out that I was still young enough. He obviously, back then with the rules, he realized that he had to wait until my sophomore year. But we stayed in touch after that. I started getting letters and all that. So it became one of those where I was, as I got closer to graduating, I knew I had to take the SAT. I knew how to just start preparing for potentially, if I didn't sign out of high school as a free agent, that I was going to go to school. I started preparing for that. And obviously that was probably the best decision I ever made.
One thing I've noticed with athletes is how seriously and what amount of attention they give to everything they work at. Like, obviously, you at a young age were very serious about sports and about your education and getting the scores you needed. And I see that with a lot of athletes. And so I guess the biggest thing right now is with us doing statistics, we're seeing this huge shift in the world of baseball. And when did you start seeing this shift happening? Because now athletes are all focusing in on statistics. They're saying, okay, I got to know the stats. I got to know how they impact this. And they're all getting so serious about statistics. I have to know how stats work. So when did you see this shift start to happen with athletes focusing a lot of their attention to this?
That's a very good question. Those things, I think that's been happening. The wave of the analytics, statistics, the gathering of collecting data, has been going on for quite a few years now, but I think it's turned the corner big time in the last few years, especially with all the teams being able to get on board with it. So I would say that I started seeing it my very last year that I actually was able to play in the majors when I was with the Orioles. I was part of the organization from 14 to 16, and I remember they were pretty analytically oriented, and they were really heavy on a lot of the stuff. But at that time, we weren't really provided as much information as there is out there now for the players. So I just started noticing, and I found myself in an in-between stage in my career when I was still realizing that I was good enough to play, but it was still hard for me to get jobs or job offers. And some of that stuff pretty much came down to a lot of the numbers that I was very unaware of at the time that were kind of against me, honestly. And I wish I'd known, because I probably would have been able to prolong my career a little longer had I known a little more about it. But that was probably the year, I would say 16, when I was still able to somehow miraculously to make it back to the big leagues and play for the Orioles for a period of like 2 weeks. And I remember seeing the numbers that were getting involved into breaking down the players and seeing the things that they were taking into account, that it wasn't just your regular batting average or how many homers you hit or if you ran X times down to first or 60-yard dash. I mean, it was a lot more stuff that now that I've been able to coach, I've been able to notice the difference and understand a lot more of what goes on that side and on that side of the evaluations.
Like you were just saying right there, you've transitioned from being a player into a coach. So I assume statistics plays an even larger role in coaching now, as you as a coach, helping these players understand things you wish you understood as a player. And how do you see your role as a coach and your usage of statistics? And maybe, especially for our 201 students, what are some of those most valuable concepts you hear throughout statistics uttered in baseball?
They're all. I go back and I say this by far has been like probably, with nothing against any other class that I've taken at UT. I've loved pretty much just about all of them, but I think especially in the stage that I am in my career, statistics couldn't have fit in as smoothly and as perfectly as it has so far with like what you just mentioned, transitioning into coaching, because now with this new wave, I've been able to see how much of everything that we've discussed and mentioned it throughout the class relates. I mean, I can go on and talk to you about the correlation between things like the equations that come up and how we come about formulating things to analyze. And so for me, I think a lot of things that I've been able to take from this class have been able to help me understand a lot of the players on the evaluation side of projecting. You know, you get like the descriptive, you're able to pretty much gather as much in information that had I been coaching, let's say 10 years ago, I would have just probably been able to go off the naked eye and try to improve as many players as I could. But now, I mean, you have things broken down to the milliseconds and literally every step that a player takes. I mean, it's measured, it's timed, and you're able to see which areas of players need to improve defensively, offensively, with all the things that are out there. You have Edgetronic, you have Rapsodo, you have so many new devices out in the game now that, I mean, I'm just fascinated. It's stuff that really excites me in this stage of my career, that you're able to just see that you're able to allow the players to be the best that they can be.
That's so awesome. And I want to encourage the chat to put questions in the chat you might have for Julio. We'll be taking those here after a few more questions. But to me, it's so amazing that, you know, everyone knows Moneyball by now, or most people have heard Moneyball, and how that drastically changed the game of baseball. And I think we're just seeing ripples go throughout baseball to where every year it gets more and more analytical. And have you ever had or just looked at just whole data sets on people and all their statistics broken down, like you were mentioning? Do you see things like that all the time and you try to make decisions from that?
Oh yeah, Moneyball. It's a little side note. Moneyball's one of my favorite movies, just dating back to the first time that I saw it. Like, I mean, I always think of that movie, and obviously I'm a little biased because it's a baseball movie, but it just dates back to like my playing days. And you look at Moneyball and how they were able to, Jonah Hill in the movie, obviously playing the role of Walter Podesta, was like the guy who pretty much transformed the Athletics despite their low budget, and how they were able to gather as much information and actually look at the right things to be able to find a stronger correlation on what it was to be able to get on base versus just a guy who was solely a good hitter because he found ways to get hits. And once you find a way to get on, whether it's a walk, whether it's a hit by pitch, and obviously you include the way you swing, but you combine all of them, it's stuff that, you know, now it's heavily weighted in things like there's other metrics out there now that have developed off of that. And to me, like being able to see those things like firsthand, I remember coming up to the minor leagues and trying to understand what my role was. Obviously I bounced between being a leadoff hitter and, you know, people said, oh, you could hit some homers. But I remember trying to finding a way to get on. That was a big thing. But now with the information, like they break down so many different aspects of the game that allows players to improve a lot at a faster rate when it comes to improving, like, and just maximizing each and every one of their abilities. So like we collect data, every team that's out there, they look to be able to find an edge on things that helps them maximize the player's ability, so you guys can see what it's the finished product out there on the field when you guys see those superstars and some of the other names that aren't as well known. Some of those guys obviously have had a big accomplishment by even making it to the big leagues because it's a tough feat.
No, that's amazing. You definitely, with being on College World Series team, being gold medalist, all these things, you've accomplished a lot. And I think one of the things I hear you saying is that, now the game has even more information. Like if you were coming up nowadays and you had a coach like yourself, you would be coaching them on really exact ways with all the equations and the statistics and the correlations. Like, here's what you need to focus on. We're going to get you on this exact plan to fix this one issue. We're going to give metrics of it while you're improving it. And then we're going to chart it over time to see where you're improving and if you're meeting these goals. And it's very, very, they were probably doing that before, but it's more analytical than ever with more data and more output.
Yeah, to me, I think it's that's why I've enjoyed this class so much, like just watching and going about the business of, I mean, understanding, like I even was like earlier in the semester when we started, it was like looking at like the equations of like when for each unit increase in X, like we'd expect, like all that stuff is literally how the game, not necessarily exactly on the playing field, but when it comes to maximizing every team's ability to win a ball game and make it into a playoff race. I think all that comes down into understanding every player. And you also can go into the probabilities and like the randomness factor of things. Like there's a lot of randoms and factors in baseball that are out there. So you need to understand like what you take and what you don't out there to be able to understand the game. Like random is not just, okay, well, that just happened. Like we use it kind of like as we discussed in class to mimic reality. Like the larger the sample, the better the better you're able to make the evaluation. If you have a player with, you can't just say, I know we've discussed it, even some of the examples you've talked about in class, it's like, well, we expect this guy to get a hit. What are the chances of him getting a hit in three at bats if he's a guy who gets on 80% of the time? So like I've even found myself like doing a lot of this and applying it to baseball. Like what are the chances for a guy who's got an 80% probability of getting on base, of him getting on base 3 times in a row, like and so on. So this is like a game within a game, and that's why to me like it's really exciting because like everybody that's watching and that is taking statistics at first might be able to see like, okay, well, I'm going to take this and pass it. Like, I mean, there's so much that statistics is relatable to anything that you do in life, from, playing baseball into the medicine with the things that we're dealing with today.
Oh yeah.
All that, gathering the information. I think it's the bottom line, and making the best and most educated decision that you can for the betterment of a business, for any industry, or for an organization. In this case, like the one that I work for, like the Yankees.
I promise you, I did not ask Julio to say such amazing things about statistics. It's just, everyone knows I love statistics so much, and I'm glad that you've seen the utilization and the importance of statistics. We got amazing student questions. I'll be asking pretty much all of them here in a moment, okay. But people seemed hyped in the chat. So we'll do just a few more questions here, and we'll jump to student questions. I guess one of the biggest things is we're at the University of Tennessee. You're wearing a UT shirt. I'm wearing a UT shirt. So we've got our UT shirts on today. Awesome. And so with that, how did your experience at UT, past and present, prepare you for the future?
This was, and I think I might have mentioned it briefly at the very beginning. It was by far the best decision I ever made in my life. Just having gone to college, gone to UT, the transition of like the cultural shock for me coming from Dominican and barely speaking English and transitioning. I mean, all you guys who are there in Knoxville or have been at campus, like I graduated from a class of 115 people to going to a school of 30,000 students at the time. I don't know where we are now, but I think just being able to go out there and be on your own and grow and learn the things that you're able to apply in life, not only in my professional career as a baseball player, but like now on this side, I think it's been huge. I mean, I look back and like every experience that I had, even good or bad. I mean, even with some of the classes that I struggled with, like, I mean, it made me better. It's some of the stuff that, at times it could sound cliche, like, oh, but like it really does. Sometimes when you you even struggle to get that C or anything that you put the time and effort, like all that transfers into things that you move on once you become a professional in whatever area that you decide to move on to. In college was like, I mean, I don't know. I go back and this is something that goes to what I was telling you, like how important, this is why I feel so strongly about statistics. Like the reason why I'm sitting here today and like I was able to play in the big leagues and give myself the best of chances was it came down to statistics and analytics that was collected at the time and I was very unaware of. It's a quick story of my agent at the time, or he was my advisor at the time. I think they provided me with information on the probability and the chance of a college player making it to the big leagues versus a high school player. I mean, you look at the breakdown of those things and I remember seeing the numbers and it was astonishing, like how many college players made it. So like that weighted heavily on my decision. Not that I wouldn't have gone, but I mean, had the people that provided me with that information at the time hadn't done that, I probably would have shifted still closer to 50-50. But once I saw it, I was like, well, if I'm going to give myself a better chance and get my education while I'm doing this, and even if I don't play, I'm still going to get an education out of it and move on and have a professional career in anything that I choose, then I'm going to go that route. So I made the decision based on that information that was collected, analyzed, and he used it. Obviously, it was used to recruit professional athletes to represent, obviously, in an advising category, because you couldn't obviously be an agent at the time. But that changed my life there. So UT is just like, I mean, it means so much. I mean, I'd like to give as much as I can to the students and provide them with any sort of advice. I know that a lot of them could be dealing with a class that they don't understand. I mean, imagine me, like I barely at one point spoke the language, and I mean, I was putting enough time. So it was still something that I look back and as much as I struggled with the weather, how cold it was coming from a tropical, all that like made me better and allowed me to be who I am today.
I think that's so amazing, and there's so many great questions in the chat, so thank you. Keep the questions coming. We'll try to go through quite a few of them, but I really like your story right there, how it's interesting how statistics were even influencing your decision early on, because what you mentioned was a conditional distribution. Given someone is coming from high school, what's the probability of them going to the majors? Given someone is coming from college, what's the probability of them going to the majors? We could use a mosaic plot and analyze this. And so all of this right here plays into our roles, our daily lives. So even before you had studied statistics, you were using statistics because you kind of understood this will increase my probability. So it's kind of an X variable. This will help me have a higher probability of the Y of being in the major leagues, which is my goal. And then you also show the value of education. Like I'll have an education too.
And you know what, I've done so much reading after I've even taken on the class, because it's just stuff that I want to know more about. And I go back, I say like, oh, I wish I'd known more, but it's like, it's where I am. And now I want to pass it on. I want to be able to help as many people, whether it's an athlete or non-athlete or professional athlete. I think it's stuff that it applies. Like I really wish that a lot of this had been available, but now it's not. Now it is. Now I'm able to use it. Like I'm in a position where I have a lot of like Dominican kids in organizations who, barely speak the language. So now it's my job to be that conduit, be able to pass on the things that I know that they're struggling with. And it's just, to me, a lot of this, I look back and it's like, man, I'm glad this route turned out to be the way it did.
And I thank you for everything you do, because I've seen this a lot with athletes. At least the ones I've met, they're very interested in helping people who kind of are going through a similar thing that they are, like maybe are trying to, get into sports or finish their degrees, and they help a lot of people who really need help. And I really appreciate that you're reaching out to people. And so I guess some people who, maybe need reaching out to are people who want to return for their degree. Like a lot of people want to finish up their degree. Maybe they're 25, 30, 35, 40, and they're like, okay, I need to finish my degree. I want to finish it off. And what advice do you have for these people about returning to finish a degree? And Julio's video is frozen. Julio, can you hear me? We might need to try to reconnect to Julio, everybody, right here. Looks like the video is frozen. I'm going to put up our screen here for 1 second. So it looks like he's going to rejoin. Let me rejoin. We are going to reconnect with Julio in 1 second right here, everybody. So let me reconnect. We're going to get this reconnected right here real quick. So 1 moment, please. with everyone knows, Zoom is a massively being used program right now. So let me redo this right here. Link again, and it should again. Here we go right here. So 2 seconds, everybody. We'll have Julio back on the line right there. The video froze. Zoom is ever popular right now. So we will have Julio back on the line right here. Let's see. I might give a quick call. How's everyone doing in the chat? I think there's some amazing questions right here. I see so many great things right here. People asking about how it's changed with all the position shifts that are happening. Shifting is a huge thing. I've heard so much. We are reconnecting to Julio right now. So we just had a dropped call. Well, thank you very much. We made this yesterday right here. We've got Julio with the Cubs right there. And we've got him with Tennessee. Everything is going great. And so I'll have Julio back on the line in just a moment here. We had Zoom drop the call, but we will have Julio right back on the line here. Even though all the new statistics are coming more accepted across baseball, is it still receiving some pushback from players and coaches? That's interesting right there. That is a really good question right there. So I think I've got Julio right here, and we will have him back. Love the facial hair. This is the quarantine beard for anyone watching this in the future. We're currently during the quarantine time. So Julio says that his connection is connecting right here. And so we should have it work. Might have had an internet moment or a Zoom moment. And let's see what I might be able to do. Try phone. So maybe he can open there too. So we will have him back on the line here in a moment. How's everyone doing in chat right now? We're just going to reconnect to Julio here for a moment. I really love all the questions. Terry asks, how do you handle situations in your analysis where you see statistical significance, but there's not practical significance? Oh, that is a chapter 16 question right there. That is an amazing question right there related to it. With all the position shifts, we heard that one. Now as a coach, do you see teammates getting competitive about advanced statistics on field stats like exit velocity? I know exit velocity is a huge thing that they are checking into. That is a huge thing. And so we should be connected here in a moment. Let's see the other questions. Do you think statistics do a good job right now of describing how good a player is, or do you think there will always be intangible skills? That right there, Jake, is a question I really want to ask. Having life experience, you now have a job, finance, families. If you could create a class for life, what would it look? Wow, Nicholas, amazing question. So keep the questions coming. We'll have Julio back on here in a moment, but we are to the question time for students. And sorry, the last question there got cut short, but we should be connecting back in via Zoom. Let me make sure everything is set up for him to join back. It should be all right. Let me do the invite while I'm on this screen right here. So let me go to, I will tell you when Julio's connected. How is everyone doing today? We have we are doing just our Stat 201 stuff right here. And we'll see if we can get Julio back on the line. Oh wait, we got Julio back on the line. So Julio, can you hear me back on the line right now? We've got Julio back on the line.
I'm back.
Julio, you are back. Awesome. So let me bring do you want to turn on your video or so
Yes.
we can, awesome. So we'll wait here. And so we have, boom, we got Julio back. Sorry about that. We just had a dropped signal right there with Zoom. So we are back. The last question we had before we're getting to the student questions, and there's some really awesome student questions here. What advice do you have for students who return to complete their degree?
Man, I'd really encourage anybody who gets the opportunity or just to try their best to finish it. I mean, I'm 15 years removed from college, and yeah, I can say I wish I'd been doing it throughout my playing days, but it's stuff that, at the time, so focused on the game and maximizing my playing career, I think I got a little bit away from it. But I did end up taking a few classes, but it's something that, I mean, you just got to go and finish. It's something that's so valuable. I feel like, I mean, there's so many things that say, oh, like you don't need a degree to do this, but I feel like with so many things that are out there, especially at UT, that are being taught, like whatever you choose to have a career on, like, I mean, go back. It's something that I think once you understand the importance of it and realize, like, I'm 34 now, and I mean, I feel like I'm just not getting started like the rest of my life as far as past my playing days. So there's so much for me to learn as far as the things that I'm going to be able to have an impact on, especially on the baseball side, with so many players that I'll be able to touch their lives in their careers as well. So finish. I mean, it's something that I would encourage anybody.
That's we got people in the chat. TW saying hey to you. They say hey Julio.
ATW.
And
I remember him. I remember seeing him online.
yeah, no, and TW is actually Tracy, and they leave a lot of the So no, it's so good seeing everybody. I didn't. I asked who it was too. And I was like, wait, which one? And then I made them a mod too. And no, I really like how positive you are and how you see the value of education, because there's a lot of, I'll go to that one because there's a question about the value of education. Oh, I like this one a lot. Nicholas asked, so it's kind of related to school and jobs and life. Having the life experience you have now with job and family and finance, etc. If you could create a class for life, what would it look like?
If I could what?
Create a class like for people's life, like how to, like just if you could create a class that helped people with life, what would it be? That's a big question.
Yeah, that's a huge question. I mean, you can go there's so many aspects in life that, I mean, you can go into finance. I feel like there's a lot of things in the financial side that aren't being taught, but like statistics has a little bit, once you understand a little bit of numbers, but that would be one. And obviously when it comes to like relationships too, like, so for people who obviously choose to get married and decide to move on, like there's that big drastic, adjustment as far as like when you live with somebody else, when you have kids and you have to spend time, even for me, like, I mean, some of the stuff I got to do, I got 2 daughters and my wife, we're obviously on constant like go with things. So a lot of that stuff, yeah, I mean, your parents can give you as much, but not that there needs to be a class exactly on how to be a parent, but as far as like understanding things, and I think college in general, you get a little bit of that, but if there's something that could help you transition into some of those things, I think it could be helpful.
No, I think it's amazing. I think people need to, like you said, transition into these things, whether it be marriage, family, jobs, children, and kind of be open to learning, like be a constant learner. So I think that's what we promote. And so we got a lot more baseball related ones. This one right here, Sean asks, are statistics as important in other sports as they are in baseball? It seems like they are emphasized way more in baseball. So have you seen this with other sports? Maybe you know some other people.
I have some friends. I got a friend of mine, Al Horford. He plays for the 76ers in the NBA. We actually grew up together. He's played for the Atlanta Hawks, the Celtics, and he's now with the 76ers. He's a guy who I know that I've talked to, and like I feel like all throughout, like in every sport, there is some sort of analysis of data collecting and breaking down. I mean, if you want to go into it, like even when it comes to contracts, like the decisions that are being made today with all the things that you guys only get to see, like the numbers on headlines, like, oh, this guy's making this or that. Like there's so much that goes into that. In arguments between, back and forth between an agent and a team, there's things that are involved. Like, I mean, it's something that I even was refreshed the other day when I was learning, like, and I obviously knew it, like there's a negative correlation from like no matter what age, as you get older, your performance starts declining, but to what age, there's obviously outliers. You see some guys, and that's kind of what the agent uses against some teams to obviously try to get as much. So on and so forth. I think like in terms of other sports, I mean, I don't have a doubt that they're involved in analytic to some extent. Like I would have to obviously ask him a little more, especially in the NBA. I know that there's plenty of things that they measure and that they keep up with. It's something that actually I'm glad he brought it up, because as much as we discuss things about, what's going on with our families and lives today, like, and how he's feeling, I think that's something that I'd be curious also to know on that level when it comes to the NBA and some former NFL players too that I know that I came up when I was at school that I still know as well.
No, that's so awesome. And I think, like you said, there's things about statistics. We oftentimes think about it as how people just try to win at sports, But then you've got statistics on contract negotiations. You've got statistics along with like how the arena actually functions, like with the concessions they're selling, all these other things that the tickets are selling. So it's one big equation. How do we run our business? How do we get the best players? How do the players get the best contracts? Well, at least for them, because everyone's on a different side of what's the best contract. So I think that's awesome. Jake asks, do you think statistics do a good job right now of describing how good a player is, or do you think there will always be intangible skills that stats will never be able to measure?
Bam, that's a very good one. That's something that's huge. That's 10,000 points.
That's a million points, Jake.
A million points. That's something that's a constant go. Like there's so many random factors in the game, from the field conditions, the decisions from umpires, and that stuff that obviously you guys can hear. The people who follow sports, especially baseball, people have talked about, bringing computerizing the strike zone but still, like the human element factor of that, you can go so on and so forth about the things that go on when it comes to the decisions that are being made about the wind, the elements of the fields. Like you literally can find just about anything that goes outside of the things that are in our control. So that's something that, like, right now when it comes to discussions, like, it's still a work in progress in a lot of the models, a lot of things that are being like formulated to be able to come up with the true skill of a player is something that's obviously on, like, developing. It's something that's still on the go. And I don't have a doubt, like, that there'll be something that will get us close to finding that, to be able to find, especially now that you see the money that's out in the game. Like, I mean, it obviously has to come down to things that they're obviously for certain to do. And even when it comes to that, you still see some contracts overperform and some contracts underperform.
And it'd be interesting. It's probably, I would assume it's like a bell-shaped curve. Maybe I wonder how good they are at predicting performance. And if it does make like a bell-shaped curve, that people are within probably 2 standard deviations of what we would expect them to perform.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Yeah.
The thing, and something that I like to mention that I was going to discuss a little bit more in detail before we got cut off was that when it comes to, like, every aspect, like, for people who know baseball, there's what they call the 5 tools. You see somebody who's really good defensively, who's got a really good arm, somebody who hits the ball out of the park, who's got power, somebody who hits for average, and somebody who runs fast. So every facet of the game, like, is quantified in some sort. Like, there's a way to analyze it. And, like, you find, like, a pitcher, obviously we say, well, a pitcher doesn't do any of that. Well, even the pitchers, with all the technology, there's devices, like I mentioned earlier, like the Edgetronic, the Rapsodo, like, you can find it out there that's being utilized now. Like, you can look at the spin rates, the spin axis. You can see things that are out there that allow us as coaches, not me because I'm not a pitching coach, but on the defensive side, because I'm mainly, my field of expertise is mainly on the defensive side for outfielders, and I do the base running also, and a little bit of the bunting. So a lot of that, everything, like, we have information to be able to quantify and be able to break down, to study and do the best that we can to transition and pass on that information in the smoothest way possible. Like, that's one of the things that I get to do, that I enjoy, because to me, and that's one of the benefits of having gone to school too. I think, not that I learned statistics at the time, but, like, once you have a little bit of a feel of how to process that information and digest it, you're able to pass it on to people who might not be able to. And that obviously gives you a little bit of an advantage to help out others.
I think that's amazing, because your skill set is just growing more and more and more. And like you're saying, the skill set can be used to help others. And I think that's the point of why we use statistics, is because we see it as something you can use daily, as something that can be used in, like you were mentioning, medical, or you're mentioning finance, you were mentioning all these different things. So I think that's awesome. We've got another question here from Hugh. He says, now as a coach, do you see baseball players getting competitive about advanced statistics, like on-field stats like exit velocity, on-field stats like exit velocity?
Yes, that's a good one. I was going to touch on that too. That's huge, because that's on the hitting side too. You guys obviously are familiar with the launch angles and exit velocities. That stuff that's out there, and yeah, there's competition. I'm pretty sure that, like, players are aware of, like, what they do and how hard they hit it, and it's a very healthy competition that you can build around things like that, because players now have the information of of what they're doing on a every swing basis. Like sometimes, like when I was playing earlier, starting my career, like I knew I hit a ball hard, but how hard did I hit it? And some of the videos you show, like I don't know if I can track that down at the time, but now they have that information and it shows you, okay, what that feels like. And us as coaches, like we try to watch videos of things that we know they're doing well, and we try to make them repeat it to be able to become consistent. So that's on that side with those metrics. There's so many things in baseball. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole of information when it comes to the data collected, because this game is such a complex game that there's so many factors that are involved. That people that have seen the games the last few years, you get to see the shifts that go on in the game. That's what you call a prescriptive, like analysis, like based on the information that we get on this guy, we can predict him that he's going to be able to do this. Therefore, this is what we're going to prescribe. We're going to be able to put X players in certain positions on the field, because this is where the tendencies and the probabilities of this guy hitting the ball. It might not happen 5%, 10%, but we're going to play the 90% of the time. And it's all playing with those things and allowing yourself to give yourself the best chance to allow your team to win that ball game.
You're already talking about our 400 level classes right now with prescriptive analytics. That's the real deal. That's where everyone wants to get, is
Nice.
making the choices based on the predictions. So you're right at there. And you mentioned lowering the variation. You said keep them consistent. So I automatically heard you want to lower the variation, because statistics is all about understanding, controlling, and reacting to variation in data. So I thought that was really amazing right there. We've got Terry Higgins, our latest moderator on the channel. Terry, you're now a mod. He says, how do you handle situations in your analysis where you see statistical significance but not practical significance? Do they talk much about that? Like, maybe there's something that they find. I'll let you kind of expand on that if you'd like.
Yeah, those things, like, it's interesting because that is stuff obviously is being discussed right now. And to me, going on, to be honest, this is my second year coaching, and I was put at the level of last year. I was in AAA, which is obviously right before you make it to the big leagues. So it was like a big learning curve for me to be able to digest a lot of the information that was being thrown. But as far as like being able to see that yet, I haven't quite found like an example, because I'm diving into a lot of the stuff that is it kind of takes time to be able to do, like especially when it comes to analyzing, breaking down a player, not only projection, but like how many innings does he have? Like somebody that is shown who's an above average defender for say, based on the numbers, but then you look and he's only played, I don't know, maybe 10 innings, or
small sample size, right?
Sample size is not big enough. Like we have ideal innings and at bats for hitters that we want to be able to go off of, to be able to make our decisions and reject or not reject, like it's a fail to reject. Like those things like come in handy, because okay, this guy has 600 at bats or 1,000 at bats. Okay, we have a pretty good idea of this. And yes, there's things that we can obviously improve on the player, that we can tweak, and there could be a jump. And obviously the younger you are, you see the bigger leaps on as far as productions, which is probably the most exciting thing also. When you're older, like for me, towards the end of my career, like I pretty much knew what I was going to do. Like I was going to hit 300, I was going to steal X amount of bases. But as far as other things, like the scouts and the teams kind of knew what I couldn't do and what I could. But when it comes to a prospect, like there's a world out there of development that you can assist them with by guiding them mentally and physically, watching them how they go about their reps and on a day-to-day basis from the second they step on the field. How are they spinning the ball? How are they catching the ball? How is their technique? So it's a pretty neat concept for me to now be able to understand. So to answer his question is like, there are things that I would have to kind of dive in a little more to be able to say, okay, well, we have this, but it's not practical because of that. Like, I think if you were to ask guys who've been doing this for probably 5 to 10 years, they'd be able to give you that. So I didn't want to like come up and say something that I knew I hadn't kind of experienced yet as a coach.
Yeah, so I guess, so after more years of experience, if you know something does impact them, but you try it and it's not making a big enough impact, you're like, okay, well, we need to focus on these big level things in baseball. I think that's amazing right there. we've got the next question from Austin. With all position shifts that are happening in baseball nowadays, all the shifting of the outfield to different players and all this, how do you combat that as a coach to get players on base? I guess you're not really an on base. You said you're running an outfield, so you're the one maybe, I don't know, dealing with shifts.
Yeah, so I in a way I'm dealing with shifts in the outfield. Obviously, there's different areas on the field. Infielders, we have an infield coach who moves the infielders, and I move my outfielders depending on who's sitting. But still, I mean, I still from the playing days. Overall, this will be my 14th year in baseball. So even though I might not know exactly how a coach would go about everything because I'm so new, but I also still have the field experience. So to me, I feel like that wouldn't have happened in the first place if I had been still playing because I was a big bunter and I could bunt well. So obviously, if anything, I always had a third baseman literally right on top of me as I was hitting.
Oh.
So I would have hit like 1,000, and that's something I'm sure anybody that knows baseball and knows that guy is a good bunter, he'll be able to tell you, oh yeah, he'll just bunt the ball. Like if you see some of the highlights on the one that I just brought up, like that was one of them. One year, like I had like 17 in the big leagues. I think I tied for first with Eric Ibar. So like I could handle that. But there's guys now that are being taught, and I'm sure like they're finding ways to combat it because at the end of the day, if you're hitting a ball for so hard and it's still being caught, like yeah, over the long course, like it'll translate. And I think that's why some of the guys that are like bigger and that you're not really expecting them to be running are going to see force, but other guys that are in between, I think they're going to find ways in certain situations that are going to try 9th inning, 8th inning, 7th inning, or whenever it may be that they find it is the best situation. They're just going to go and lay down a bunt, as I'm sure that has already happened in the last couple of years. You can find examples of guys, okay, I'll just bunt it, and they'll get on and they start the inning, and before you know, they start a rally, and then they end up winning a ball game.
You got to look for that most opportune moment to where they don't expect it, and boom, you get that bunt, you get on base, you start that rally, you win the game. And I think that's awesome because everything you're saying is about analyzing the data to figure out when might someone tell you when you're going to bat, we want you to bunt it down third base line. Here's what we want you to do. We've been practicing this. They're not expecting it. They're not lined up for this. They're expecting you to knock it out of the park. We just need you to, get on base, and we're going to here's the plan. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we come up with so many game plans as coaches, like to attack pitchers, to attack hitters, like to anything. Like you can look at it from both ends. Like it's stuff that obviously the longer the players who are superstars are going to still do well, but over the course of the season, like maximizing the team's chance of winning come down to you collect the data, you analyze it, and you pass it on to the players in the best way possible to be able to win those games. Like if you look at, for example, some guys, I don't know if they're familiar with like the WAR, WAR, it's like wins above replacement. Like I was just reading an article on that earlier, and like that's such a complex terminology in metric because it encompasses so many things to be able to have a player be graded, and it's by the decimals. Like, I mean, you could have a play and that could give you like a 0.2, and some players like the Mike Trouts will have like eight wins above replacement, which is phenomenal in a season. Like I was looking at mine and like I had like a 1 something over the course of my career. It's not like great, but I look like you can see guys who have a negative effect on teams. Like, oh, you ended up losing a team like a game or two, even though a guy going and sitting at the ballpark might think that he's a very good player. Like, but the only way that you're able to come to that conclusion and understand that is based on metrics that back then people didn't have available.
You hit upon the next question so perfectly, because Zach is asking, how do you break down metrics like Rapsodo or TrackMan to players who don't have a great understanding? Like if you don't have players who understand WAR, like you said, you're reading articles on it, you're getting as educated as possible. You need to communicate this to them. And how do you do this? And what do you see as the struggles here?
It's like you said, it's for me as being new also, it's like, and for most people who are new to coaching, or even the guys who have been in generations of baseball that have coached for decades, this is a lot of new stuff too. So somebody that have been in the game for 30 years could just be as not understanding to a lot of this concept as much as I am coming in new, because it's a new wave and it's stuff that it's helped the game in ways that it hadn't in the past. So like I want to learn now, like even now that we're in these times, like I try to learn and read as much as I can about those things so I can give myself a chance to to understand it the best possible, so I can help the Spanish speakers and put it in simpler terms, and even anybody, the English speakers too. It's just like, this is what this means. Even though this shows that even though the result wasn't what you wanted, or this didn't happen, like you were still able to, you should still be able to feel good about this, because over the course of the season, you continue this level of consistency with this exit velocity and this launch angle, or this route efficiency for a defender, or your first step which is being measured the second you leave. Okay, well, you're good with that. The ball was just happened to carry because of the conditions today. Like, don't beat yourself up, or don't do that. Like, those things, like, we need to be there to be able to assist and explain to them that we understand that. Don't worry that you didn't catch that ball. Don't worry that this happened in this at bat. Like, we need to be able to understand, even though there's a negative result, or what it could be perceived as negative result, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's translated into metrics or things that we're evaluating, to be able to know your true skill set as a player.
That is so awesome, because this next question leads into it so perfectly, and I guess we'll go to 4. I thank you so much for your time today, because we just have people in the chat saying this is awesome.
No problem.
So people are, I like it. We have Megan asking, now that statistics are becoming ever more prevalent across sports and baseball, how do you see you said you've got this new wave of people, but someone could be in coaching for 30 years and they're really not, you've got all these new machinery, you've got all these new metrics. How do you see that impacting players and coaches who maybe come from the older style of, let's just gauge the player by just looking at them?
Yeah, that's a very good one, because for everybody just to get on board, I think there's a lot of things that back then weren't utilized, but now you start seeing the benefits of them. I mean, most of the teams that you see that are finishing in the top of their division, most of them are analytically driven. They understand the importance of a lot of the things that the game provides, that technology has provided them. So some of that is, at the end of the day, is it's our job pretty much to be able to understand that is something that we need to be able to take on and understand in the best way possible. Everybody has different ways of assimilating information and digesting it. And some people might take longer, but I think, you do run into people that aren't as big believers as others. But I think if you still happen to find the lot of the positive that it does bring, you're able to really speed up the process on so many things. Like, I mean, you can name some of the best players that have played in history, and a lot of them, they technically were doing the things that we have info on now, but they were just doing it on their own. So that's kind of what the big dilemma is. Like, it's another article I was reading about Barry Bonds, and he was even asked about a lot of this stuff, and he was pretty much the founder of all this when it comes to a lot of this stuff. He was just kind of in his own world of doing it, and that's why he was one of the best players of all time. And I'm sure you can name all the other guys, and they in some shape or form they were utilizing the analytics and doing data and collecting data on their own on things to be able to maximize, whether it was like gathering. I mean, it was from like people writing down on notebooks back in the day when like only pencils existed and stuff, like, oh, I got this guy ball did this, it did, and some went more in depth than others. But we need to understand, like, this is something that is beneficial. Like, I might not necessarily quite understand everything about it, but I'm going to do my best to see how educated I can get to be able to pass on all the information to the guys who are just coming up, 16 years old, that are just coming from the Dominican Republic, that, barely speak the language, or even Americans that have never been really in an organization like the Yankees. I mean, it's phenomenal, the things that we're able to do to be able to maximize the opportunity for the players to give themselves a chance to become major leaguers.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, definitely helping people out. We have the saying, "Vols help Vol," and Vol means all. So I think it's awesome. We've got Tracy asks, "What are your future goals outside of baseball?" So what goals do you have?
Oh, outside of baseball, that's that now you're trying to expose me a little bit. I've started my transition, especially from the time that I decided to move on from playing, I would say in a way was pretty smooth, because I was able to kind of go into coaching the way everything worked out and go into pretty much, I had like a window of a month. I know some players can attest that, they usually have a window of playing and then they finish, and then they kind of need to kind of see what they want to do. What for me, I think in the short term, I kind of, once I figured out and I realized that I enjoy this so much, just jumped on board, and I've been like focused on knowing that I'm going to probably be doing this for a long period of time of my life, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it just depends. I don't know. It could be collegiate. It could be obviously professionally for a while. But right now, like everything that I've done in the Yankees organization and the things that I've learned and what they've been able to provide me with it's been great. And I don't have anything that I can say outside of the game. Like family wise, I mean, two daughters, two beautiful daughters, my beautiful wife there. We're obviously here. We live in Nashville. So it's something that we're kind of taking it day by day as far as like what we want to do after, maybe I potentially finish my degree here sooner than later, and then decide to move on once our girls are a little older, and we decide to see what's best for everybody.
I think it's awesome. I think it's like you said, just take it day by day, just kind of figure it out. I think that's what, you just keep always looking at your future, reevaluating. And we got more baseball questions here. We'll do a few more. We'll go until 4 here. So I'm going to take some of the questions right here. How do you think the proposed playoff changes could affect players? So I don't even know about these proposed changes.
As far as like the shortening the seasons, or there's a lot that's going on in the game with how we're being affected with COVID-19. It's a lot to juggle from the things that I've read, like the logistics of potentially bringing back the game with no fans. I don't know if that's what he's trying to ask, if I'm being asked, or as far as the players' contracts, obviously they were expected to get paid X, or there's just things that are like literally as we're speaking, they're being discussed. I don't have like all the info or even much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of go off of what I read, but being part of like the players association and all that, like, and having obviously current players who are in the majors, that I have still friends and former, I think you just share your opinions on things and hear, but it's just going to be tough because it's obviously something that we really have never experienced. It's like once in a lifetime kind of thing could be. So, everybody wants baseball back. I know like the summers, like people that love the game. I've always been on the fields from the time that I was in college from playing. I think it's something that I don't know. It's going to be weird. So
Yeah.
we'll just have to kind of wait and see. I think they're going to do their best to get the game going as quickly, but obviously make sure that everybody is safe first.
I think it's awesome. I think, we've, as a society, been making a lot of really good, hard decisions. But that's what we're doing. We're trying to keep everyone safe, keep everyone well. And, I really appreciate all the efforts like MLB has been making, everyone, our college has been making, all these great things. So, yes. And I really love this next question because you got to travel a whole lot. Have you been to pretty much all across the United States? I imagine.
I was driving with my wife and the girls. We were driving from Tampa the other day, and we had like a 10-hour drive. It turned out to be like 11. So that was one of the things we did. Like we went back and forth. Like, what places has she been, and had I been? Because I obviously met her at UT. My wife went to UT, but prior to that, like, or even after, once we got together, like I've been just about everywhere, like especially from playing collegiately, like all throughout the South, like in conference, you name Baton Rouge, like Gainesville, like playing all the teams in the Southeastern Conference, to being in the minor leagues. I mean, I started out my career like in California, so I moved out there, and then I was in Texas. Then I was in Oklahoma. Then I went, obviously, when I made it to the big leagues, I was obviously in Arlington, Texas. So then when I played for the Cubs, I went in Chicago. But I mean, throughout the game has taken me everywhere. That was one of the things that when I retired, I said, because I was so thankful for the fact that, I don't know, had I not played the game, like what would I have done? But I was looking at a map and I was like, I mean, from cities to states, like I pretty much had been just about anywhere. Like I couldn't tell you exactly, because obviously some of the places that I've been were just for playing and I didn't have much time to like visit, but still like being able to see there and go to the field there, and maybe some restaurants down the street. I've been to Seattle, been playing the Yankees, playing the Marlins, playing Boston, you name any team. The only teams that I didn't truly get to play was the Dodgers, the Braves, which is ironic because I lived in Atlanta at one point. So, I mean, I still had been there. But anyways, overall, like it's taken me to so many places, and it's made me appreciate what it is to travel and be so open to like understanding other things of other states and just learning about it, period.
And is there any like stadiums that stand out to you? Like any very interesting stadiums that you're in? Like ones that you're always like, oh, that's such a like.
Well, the one where I made my big league debut in Arlington was one of my favorites, obviously, because I went there when I got drafted. They took me there, and I remember going out. I was like, man, it was like a dream come true. And I always loved they just took it down. The Rangers just built a new one, but I was like even emotional about it. I was like, man, I won't get to see that place anymore. But aside from that, it was just very captivating. Just the design of that ballpark. It was like, I mean, I was just in awe, and that was, I would say, one of my favorites. I think the Mariners was another one. I think just for the fact, I think going back, growing up, like one of my favorite players, Ken Griffey, or my favorite player, who I got a chance to play against. That was like one of the craziest things. Was being able to watch him like playing in Safeco Field, back what it was called then, and me being able to be on that same field at one point, and like.
Did you get to meet him?
I got to meet him. I got a jersey signed by him. I don't even know where it is.
That's awesome.
But I have it. I got to put it up. But it's stuff that like he dedicated to me. Like I watched him. Like I remember one of the experiences like where I watched him. I was playing center field for the Rangers, and I remember him hitting a homer off of one of the guys who had been drafted with me. and I just remember being like, man, like it was such a cool experience just seeing that, because I had seen it so many times on TV, and then like I was actually watching it on the field, and it was like your idol, like the guy that you grew up admiring, like now he's doing it like playing against you. So that was like one of the neatest like and coolest experiences that I ever had, and that's why I kind of always have that one. Yankee Stadium was another one, because you feel that aura of like Yankee, like the history of that team, and playing there is like playing so many stars of the Jeters and the Alex Rodriguez and the Canoes, like those things always kind of like had you feeling a little differently once you were playing in that ballpark as well.
I think a lot of people know I'm from New York, so got a lot of New York fans in my family. They hear the New York. No, I think that's so awesome. We took so many questions today, but I always have admired your positive energy towards education, towards helping people. And I see your experience with Ken Griffey right there, where he kind of showed you so much care and attention. You're now doing that with so many people who you're helping with these experiences. And I really appreciate that. So we had a bunch of people in the chat today. Julio, I'll give you the last word if you want to plug your Instagram or anything else, but we just want to thank you. We've got thank you in the chat from Tracy right here. So I'll let you have the last word, Julio.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. I love talking anything, especially for me as is new, being able to, I feel like talking statistics. I never thought I'd be doing it in this fashion, but I think now being able to understand the nature of it, it's huge for me to apply it to what I'm doing. Like I said earlier, all you guys are going to be able to apply it in whatever you may want to do. Some guys that are at UT are wanting to go into sport. I mean, it's really coveted, like the people that are able to have like the quantitative, like that are able to digest the numbers and comprehend that and break it down and pass it on to not only athletes but corporations and organizations. Like there's so much value in that in anything that you choose. I mean, any of the guys that are interested in even a little further information about stuff, or even have any questions, obviously outside of this. I mean, my Instagram account is like Julio Borbón 20. You can, I got books that I've obviously, if you guys are interested in knowing a little bit more about, you can send me a message on there, and I'll be more than glad to guide you or direct you or even send you the right way with some of these that I've even found. I got articles that I've saved too, that I was just reading one earlier. You can let me know, and I can email those to you to learn a little bit more, because it's truly fascinating where everything is in the world, and it's always been like that. But I think now more than ever with technology, we have so many things that are made a lot easier for us, and I think it's up to us to take advantage by learning as much as we can.
I agree 100%. And I'll put some of these links in the description to the interview. And we're going to end with your highlight reel right here, Julio. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you again.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
With those at the end of 3. There's the bunt. Teixeira.
But he can't get to first himself. He throws it to the pitcher. Borbón beats the pitcher. What a good camera shot right there.
And that head first slide, which so many times you hate to see, that time just might have gotten it done.
And driven